Okay. Click, 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 click. And finally, good to go. All right, so at the end of each of the lectures, you will begin seeing the actual questions. So will be organized as easy and then question. So if you remember, the easy one is question and then multiple choice answer. The first one is supposed to be the correct one. Then they go to medium, way down, medium. So question and then short answer. And then the very end will be hard. Why is GitHub better than whatever? So there'll be a smattering of selection of each of these types of questions. So they will be linked from that day. So I click on day, and then the questions will be a link all the way at the bottom eventually. TAs are still parsing and processing them. But they'll be up there by Wednesday, and then we're just going to go through a quick review. Let me hide you of the main topics. And if you have specific questions, or you don't understand any of the questions that are asked, or you don't understand why the answers are right or wrong, that would be an excellent time to ask about those questions. Yeah?
So each lecture section has
Yep. Oh, not right now. So by Wednesday, those will be on there. Yes, there'll be the lectures that'll be tested. So I think your question is it today's lecture will be on the exam. So the questions, you guys are going to submit them today. By Wednesday, they'll be on today's lecture section. So you'll be able to go through and see what example questions there may be. And then, I don't know. So the question is, how long does it take to do the exam? There's probably going to be like 20 questions or 30 questions. Would you like more? Okay. You would like 50 questions? So it'll be like 20 to 30 questions, and you will have 24 hours. So the exam will be online inside of BlackBoard. It will open when the class period starts, and then it will close 24 hours later. And then it seems awfully not learny if I just make it open internet and you just find question by Control F and post answer. So this will be on your honor that you're not using the internet other than for study materials. There's no way for me to enforce that. So pretty please don't cheat. Yes. What?
What counts as study materials? Like, you know, like lectures and stuff?
Yeah. So what I don't want you to do is click on what is Git, go to the questions, and then just search for what the question is to find the answer, because that is not you actually learning anything. Like the exams are like a part of the grade for this class, but it's mostly project and labs. So if you feel like not learning and just searching the internet for answers to questions, then that is your problem. So on your honor, try to take the exam without finding the question and answer. Okay, so everybody understand format of exam. It's going to be online. It's going to start at class period. You will have until 24 hours later. 6:04. Everyone cool with that? Good. All right. There is a high probability that it's going to be mostly multiple choice because those are automatically graded. So that way I don't have to do it. Okay, so what is we learning today? So today we learned a little bit about HTML. It basically is a thing. It has structure, it has open tags, closed tags. It provides the structure for what your website should be. CSS provides the prettiness and the layout and all of that kind of stuff. So usability and accessibility, that was Edgar's first time standing in front of a room of people telling them anything ever. So if you see him walking around, tell him he did a good job. He definitely talked really fast and had too much information. But basics of usability and accessibility are so that your web page will get you the most amount of users possible. So accessibility means people with a variety of impairments are not challenged to come to your website and do whatever you want them to do. So you have color blindness, you have people with limited mobility who can't use a mouse, and then you have people who are actually can't see, and then the screens are read to them. So that way, if you structure your page properly and include all of the sort of invisible things behind the page, then screen readers can read it to them, because you want as many customers to your website as possible, so you want to have the minimum amount of barriers possible. And then the rest, usability is making it not annoying to be on your website. So if your users find anything that sucks about your web page or is hard to use, then they're not going to come back to it, because there's 50 other web pages on the internet just like yours. So if those ones are better or easier to use in any way, they're going to use that one instead. So you want to make your site kind of obvious. So navigation is not hard. Like, no one has to think about how to use your menus. They just make sense. The font is not tiny or ugly or Comic Sans in any way. Menus make sense. Oh wow, he added a lot more details in here. Right? There's a lot of font choices that you could pick. Some are hard to read. Like anything which is script is hard to read. You want to make your website as easy to use for your customers as possible. And if you don't, then they're just not coming back. Oh, nice. So we put a, oh yeah. I did not read what any of this is yet. Whew, that is a lot of stuff. All right. So there are luckily tools that help you do a lot of these things. Right. So if you want to figure out a good Flexbox layout, go to the Flexbox layout page and organize your things how you want them, then just copy the code from there. So CSS to me is the worst part of doing web design, but people like it sometimes. Right, so responsiveness, as things change size, then they make sense. Right, so menu becomes full screen, all that good stuff. So for a regular desktop, you got big ol' whatever, and then as it shrinks down, things happen. So this all happens in CSS. So you just have to make your CSS properly, and what you would expect to happen happens. So for this class, you do not need to be perfect CSSers. Why am I on the wrong page? There we go. So today we're going to learn about JavaScript. So the three main components of your web stuff are going to be HTML for organizing your page and putting the headers for things that they're supposed to be. CSS makes it pretty, and then JavaScript actually does the work. So who has ever programmed in Java? Just a couple people. Python? More people. JavaScript is not Java. They are two separate languages. Python is the bottom of the barrel language that hopefully you never have to program in ever again. But in GIS, it's all the hotness. JavaScript is the best of all programming languages for lots of reasons. What don't you see on here, or what do you see? This little guy right here, that squirrely bracket in my life is so important, because Python is space, 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 space to make your code like be indented how you want it to be, or tabs. So meaningful white space is the biggest bitch about programming in Python, because if you get it wrong, like nothing will work and it will probably not give you a good error. Most normal programming languages use little squirrely brackets to indicate something is inside of something else. So we are looking at JavaScript right here. Anything you can do in Python, you can do in JavaScript. It just happens beautifully in your web browser. All right, so you don't need to install Python 2.7 or make sure you have 3 point whatevers. As long as you have an internet browser on your computer or whatever is using it, JavaScript will work because every browser understands JavaScript. You don't necessarily need to have a web server running in order to make JavaScript work. You can just write it on your desktop in Notepad, name it something.javascript. When you double click on it, your browser will automatically open and try to run whatever is inside of there. So if you're working in a normal text editor for doing development of any kind, it will also highlight stuff for you. Right? So here we have some yellow stuff, some blue stuff, some white stuff, some green stuff, some red stuff. They all mean a variety of things that we will learn. You guys are also not going to become expert JavaScript programmers at the end of this class, but you will at least know enough that you can copy code from the internet and make it do what you want it to do. Because for most of the maps that you're going to be creating, you're going to go to like the Google Map documentation or the Esri Maps documentation, and you're just going to cut, paste, and then you're going to point where it gets the data from to your server rather than their sampleserver.esri.com. So JavaScript is nice because it has a lot of code already available on the internet and a lot of examples and tutorials of how to get existing packages to work. So this is what JavaScript looks like. Debugging is really easy because you do it directly in your browser. You just right-click, inspect, go over to wherever your JavaScript file is, and then just put breakpoints directly in here. We'll see more about debugging. But your whole development environment is your browser. So you don't have to install anything special as long as you have a normal computer. You can program in JavaScript. All right. So what we're looking at here is a function. So this is a nice little sort of section of code which stands by itself, and you can call it from other places in your code. Quick sort is a version of a sorting algorithm. There's also bubble sort and a variety of depth first and breadth first searches. So this one will take a list of things and organize it, is all that this does. If you needed quick sort, you would type quick sort JavaScript into Google, and you would find exactly this code. And you would eyeball it, make sure it looks right, have some known inputs and outputs, and then you would just use this code. This is what every single JavaScript programmer and mostly any kind of programmer does. Type in language name, space, thing you are trying to do into Google, go find the code that someone else has already created, look for the one that has the most upvotes on Stack Overflow, and then use that one. There should be, in this class, very little like blank canvas programming that you need to do. Anything that we're going to do in this class, someone else has already done on the internet. So part of what you'll learn in this class is Googling. Type in JavaScript space thing you want, and you will find someone has already made it. All right, so where do we put our JavaScript? So you can have JavaScript directly in your HTML file if you wish. You'll see lots of web pages where if you right-click View Source, it has these little script tags. So anything that is inside of a script tag is actual JavaScript. All right, so inside of here we have a function named my function. Then we have an open parentheses, close parentheses, open squirrely bracket, and further down below we have close squirrely bracket. And then inside of the function, the only thing it does is, what do you think this does? Console.log. Probably prints something to the console. So all it's going to do is print to the console the word hello. So where is the JavaScript console? When in doubt, right-click in your future Windows Lives in every instance. All right, so we want to inspect. And then one of these little options down here is console. All right, so if we had run this code on this page, it would say hello right there. So this is a JavaScript console where you can interactively type your JavaScript and do whatever you want. It's useful for debugging because you can see what a variable contains. Like if something's not working right, you can type the variable name here and it will just print all of the stuff that the variable has. There's a bunch of other tabs here. There's elements, which allows you to hover over the page and see what all the different pieces are. An important one for this class will be the network tab. F5 is also your friend to refresh the page. This tells you all of the different things that had to be gotten by your browser in order to show this page. All right, remember that images have a source tag, which says where the image actually lives. We can potentially have CSS files that are outside of this HTML page. We can have JavaScript files that are outside of this HTML page. So when you're looking at this network tab and you refresh the page, it will tell you all the different files that it had to go get in order for your browser to show this page. So it's helpful. It allows you to see like where the errors are. So if you have an image that's not showing up, it will be trying to get the image here and it'll be in red saying could not find image where you were trying to get it. You can filter this by just images or just CSS or just XML HTTP requests, which we're going to be doing a lot of. All right. So JavaScript can live anywhere. It can be in your HTML file, such as in the script tag, or it can be in a separate file, just like your CSS lived elsewhere. And you just bring it into your file by saying where it lives. So you can do it either way. People prefer one or the other, usually. If you keep your JavaScript and your CSS inside of your HTML file is going to be gigantic and it's going to be hard to look at and read and understand what's where. So most people keep their scripts and their JavaScript outside in different files. So something .js or something .css. Okay. So like any other programming language, JavaScript has variables. Like Python, there are no types. So it's a non-typed language. So instead of like Java, where you would have to do string line equals something, so that your variable is known to be a string, or is known to be an integer, or is known to be a float, or a byte, or anything like that. Variables in JavaScript can be anything at any time, and you can change them at your will as well. So it's very similar to Python in that way. So here we have a variable named line not being set to anything. And the next one down, we have a variable named a number of lines being set to equal. So you can initialize them in any way you like as well. So you can set it equal to something or not when you first create it. The semicolon in JavaScript is very important. So each one of your lines should end with a semicolon. If they don't, your browser will generally be able to do what it's supposed to do, but it might not work on every browser. So if you just use the right syntax, meaning semicolons at the end of everything, you will be ensured that whatever you write works on every browser. So notice we don't have to do anything special to make an integer or a string. So for those not aware, a bunch of characters in a row is called a string in computer lingo. A single letter by itself is called a char or character. And here we have an inline function, right? So this is some of the JavaScript trickery that you can do. You can create a variable named calcaddition and set it equal to the result of a function. So JavaScript programmers are notorious for making very complex code out of something that could have been way simpler. So there's performance reasons to do this, like have a variable name set to be the result of executing a function. But for most people learning programming, it just seems confusing and hard to do. So you do not have to do this, but when you're scraping the internet for code examples, you will see people doing this kind of stuff. So this one above is even worse. If you look at this, the left and right variables here are actually the result of an if-else statement. So there are a gazillion shorthands for JavaScript. So instead of just doing an if and else statement here, they put it in one line to save space and make it more confusing and make them seem to look smart. So you do not have to do this kind of syntax, but it is available and you will see it on the internet. So you just have to understand what the varieties of shortcuts are in JavaScript in order to be able to understand other people's code sometimes. I would encourage you to just write code like a normal person and not try to do all kinds of tricks to make yourself seem like a good programmer. All right. So JavaScript has the ability to store strings, numbers, booleans, arrays, and objects. So if there is anything that you've ever done in any programming language, JavaScript can also do it. So whatever programming you have done in the past, JavaScript will be able to do all of this stuff. So arrays, if you do not remember, are lists of things. And what is the number that all computery stuff starts at when you're counting? 0. So we'll go through some examples in a second about arrays and why you need to start at zeros. But finally, everything in JavaScript is an object. So very similar to Python. So as soon as you make a variable, you can start doing variable name dot whatever and setting it equal to something. To add properties to your objects, you can do the exact same thing in JavaScript. All right. So here is an example of an array. Let me zoom in a little bit. And people in mobile GIS, do not spoil the surprise. Who recognizes these characters? Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. West Philadelphia, born and raised. Okay, so we have an array example here, and that array contains a bunch of strings: Will, Carlton, Aunt Viv, Uncle Phil, and Jazz. So how many things are in there? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the number of things in this array are 5. But the first one is located at index 0. So the index of Will is 0, index of Carlton is 1, index of Aunt Viv is 2, Uncle Phil 3, and Jazz is 4. So the length of your array is 1 more than the number of indexes in your array. So this is all strings in here, right? So that's our first one. Our second one has strings and a bunch of other stuff, right? So you don't have to make an array that only contains one data type. You can have any data types together in an array. And these are 2 different notations for creating the array. The first has these square brackets filled with some stuff. The second one makes a new array with parentheses and adds stuff into it. So either one works. The other tip about JavaScript is there's at least 5 different ways to do everything. So which way are you going to pick? Whichever piece of code you find. Or whichever way your company does it is how you're going to do it. All right. So the way you get stuff out of arrays is by inserting the index of the thing you want. All right. So if we wanted to get Will out and our variable name is array example, the thing in the first position, its index is 0. That is just the world of working in computers, is that everything is different than how you imagine it would be. You will make this mistake for the rest of your life. I still make it. Starts at 0, and length goes to length of array -1. When you need to make a loop and go through it, and you're going to be like, all right, so var I equals 0, I++, or I less than array.length, that will give you an error, because you always, when you want to loop from the beginning to the end, you have to do length -1. Okay. So you can store your stuff in an array. All right, so here we have an array with things in it. But in JavaScript, generally the way you're going to be storing your data is in something called JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So it is variable colon value, variable colon value, variable colon value. So this is how you create attributes that are associated with an object. So our actual object is this thing called actors, and inside of it we have actors.will, and actors.Uncle Phil, and actor.Carlton, and actor.AuntViv. So AuntViv, if you can see, has another object inside of it. All right, so it's a hierarchy of nested things, and this allows us to go as deep as we need, or as shallow as we wish if we wanted. Right, so this was created. AuntViv was played by two actors, two actresses. So that's why it has AuntViv.first and AuntViv.second. So when you are calling web services to get data from Google Drive or from any of the mapping services, you're going to send requests that are organized like this. So it's going to be like lat, colon, then your latitude, then long, colon, then your longitude. And when you get back results from them, they're going to be structured in this way as well. So if you wanted to store this in a table, like when you right-click Open Attribute Table, do you think you would be able to do this? I'm seeing some yeses. How in the fuck are you going to get two of them in one data item? All right, so that's the trouble here. AuntViv has two data values that are supposed to be associated with it inside of one row of that table. All right, so it's a many-to-one relationship. If this was all just flat and there were only one AuntViv, then it would work okay. But since there are two, now your whole data model is blown up. So this is one of the benefits of working in JSON, is that you can have any structure you want, and some of your attributes, some of your objects inside of there can have sub-objects, and not all of them are required to. So if you remember your normal forms from your databases, first normal form, second normal form, third normal form, some of you were definitely in my class last semester. Right, so this would break a regular relational database management system, right? Because you only have rows and columns. So when you start having extra stuff where shit, this cell needs to have two values associated with it, it means that this is not going to work in your regular table. So that's why we use JSON, is so that we can have any number of rows, any number of columns, and not all of the objects inside of our table have to have the same rows and same columns and same number of things. So this is a convenient way to store messy data, where not everything is the same, and sometimes things are different than others, but they're all related to each other in some way. So there's a couple different ways that you can access the data inside of here. So actors is the name of our big data object that we've created all of these things inside. You can use them, or you can access them in array notation like this, like actors, open square, will, close square, and that will get you whatever the value is associated with the variable name inside of here called will. But you can also just do actors dot will. So you don't have to use this array notation. You can use dot instead, except for in the case of ant space viv. Anyone have any idea why that one wouldn't work with dot notation? Because there's a damn space in it. And JavaScript doesn't understand something dot word space word. So if you name your variables in normal ways, meaning no spaces in your variable names, then you won't run into that trouble. Okay, so when we want to get sort of 2 levels deep, we just get to the first, we have our first object, and then we call to get the thing associated with it, so that will bring us down to here, AuntViv, and then we want to go deeper inside, we just keep going deeper. So everything is accessible all the way down the hierarchy. So you can have as many levels deep as you wish. Okay. Cool. All right, so we got all the normal operators that you are familiar with seeing: pluses, minuses, division, multiply, modulo, which is a thing that people use. I've never needed it. So these are just regular math stuff. And then we have things which do increments. So just like in Java or Python, increases your variable's value by 1. So plus minus subtracts 1 from it. These are just shorthand for instead of having to do 6 equals 5 plus 1, we have 6 equals 5 plus plus. All right, so there's a lot of shorthand notation. These are really common in cross-programming languages. So instead of having to write 5 equals 5 plus 1 or 6 equals 5 plus 1, you just do 5 plus plus. So anytime you need to add 1 to something, use the plus plus. Anytime you want to subtract 1 from something, use the minus minus. And anytime you want to add another value other than 1, you can use plus equals. So here we have setting a equal to 1. And then we set a equal to a plus 2. And then a is then going to equal 3 at that point. So these are all shorthand. You don't have to use them. You could write the full thing out if you wish. So I guess that's where we'll stop today. And we will stop here. Okay. And then Wednesday, we're going to go over what we have covered so far in class to prepare you for your exam. So stop recording. Stop.